Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to Phil's Recap and Review, The Sopranos, Season 1, Episode 6, Pax Soprano, or Soprana. It's spelled a little different, but I always called it Pax Soprano. And I am back with my friend Matt, Big Daddy Matt, and we're here to talk about this Season 1 episode of The Sopranos. And we are back to full-fledged Sopranos this week. We have most of our cast all together for this episode. And I know we like to talk about this towards the end and as we go, Matt. And I come out here a lot and say this because I'm hyper in the moment, but this was my favorite episode we saw so far. I think, Matt, your microphone for some reason isn't working. But we got Matt with us, and his audio he's having some problems. It happened when you plugged in your headphones. Perhaps you plugged your headphones into your microphone jack. I don't know. So anyways, this episode, we deal a lot more with the Junior Soprano situation, and we get to see Junior really becoming boss and how that all develops itself. Matt, you with us?
I don't know.
Now you are. Now you're
right. All right.
Good. So, Matt, you must have really liked this episode because there was no AJ. Was there zero AJ in this?
There is zero AJ in this. However, now this comes to the caveat, though, that there was also almost no Christopher. There was 2 seconds of Christopher, 2 seconds of Paulie, 2 seconds of not a lot of pussy.
He did have the line of the night, though. I've eaten more queens than Lancelot.
Yeah, and there's almost no people that was all within like a 5-minute thing at the very beginning of the episode, and no Syl, like none of that in there.
And we've got our good friends in the motherfucking chat. Sam and Ren are in there. Yes, we can hear you, Matt. Awesome. It's good to have you guys. They just watched this episode of The Sopranos. Sam,
I know. I just read that. That's great.
Yeah, and especially with Sam, we're excited that anything we can do can get you to somewhat want to listen to The Sopranos. I just realized I had part of a digital effect on my voice. I was thinking, what the hell is wrong with my voice? And I realized I had a little bit of this effect on it. So I heard this little weirdness. So we're not going to do that anymore, even though I know Matt suggested that on one point. I do a whole podcast like this. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Phil's Recap and Review. It's time. My balls finally dropped. I guess what I mean when I say this is one of my favorite episodes, Matt, is I feel like the last episode was split perspective between Carmela and Tony. When it really comes down to it, what The Sopranos is about, even though we do have some really major side characters like Carmela and Christopher. It's really about Tony, and it's about his journey. And this episode is really back to that, and it's back to major Tony focus. I love his perspective of everything he's dealing with Junior and how he handles the whole situation. And also everything with him and Melfi, I wasn't expecting that this early because I forgot about it.
It's so weird that you forget all of this stuff because it was huge right away. I'm like, all right, this has to be more dreams. I kept thinking it was going to be another dream sequence when it happened.
And Sam and Ren said they both liked Carmela in this episode. Okay, I think this is full-fledged Carmela. I do think I have a minor celebrity crush on Edie Falco on some level. And that's part of why I hate her. It's the same thing with Sansa from Game of Thrones. I'm like, I hate you. You're so God, because they have something on me a little bit. But Carmela was true Carmela, how she handled every situation, and I love her whole arc. I shit on her a lot. It's because she's such a believable character. But when we get into the heart and the meat here of everything that happened with Father Phil and her development of acceptance or frustration, how she accepts it, it's a really interesting arc too, where she's okay with him having sex with.
Yeah, that was so weird.
Yeah, isn't that weird, Matt? It's a form of masturbation for him. But this someone that can matches my intellect, that's on my level, because anything I want to say about Carmela, she's a very intelligent person. And also, this was probably my favorite Livia we've gotten yet. Livia we talked about this a little bit in the weeks leading up to this, Matt. Livia is in a really good place in this episode for herself. Being in that home has been really helpful to get her to be laser focused with her mafioserisms in this episode. She straight up sticks her hand up Junior's ass and turns him into a Muppet. And she does almost the same thing with Tony, or just how she just you see Livia coming out, bring the cookie, the way she screams it and stuff. Oh gosh, here we go. Sam says she looked good and had some common sense in her, something I didn't see in the earlier episodes. I think Carmela definitely develops more of a sense of understanding or perspective of herself as time goes on, and she gets to a place, just because I know you haven't watched it, so I'll try not to be too specific. This all comes to some sort of head. What's great about The Sopranos, and especially Carmela's character, is she's the same, but she also develops a great deal. And she also has many different phases and does come to a point where maybe all of this is going to become too much for her.
And she fluctuates between being really strong and dominant and then being submissive to Tony at different points and being sweet to him and the whole thing. But their relationship is overall is the most important one in this entire,
it really is. And as we get into, I mean, we're looking way ahead here. Season 4 is completely dedicated to Tony and Carmela. There's a lot of other stuff that happens, but you could title that season Tony and Carmela's season, subtitle Some Shit Happens to Ralphie. I mean, basically everything else in season 4 is superfluous and doesn't really matter too much to the overall focus of the plot of the season, because we can say this, and we talked a lot about this in the original, in the episode 1, but now we can actually hear Matt. The Sopranos, instead of having a 6-season arc or 6.5, 7 seasons, however you want to look at that last season, was much more of the era. Even though everything did intersect, each specific season has its own big arc and almost own universe onto itself. And in season 4, it's very much Tony and Carmela's season, and everything else is in the back of importance. Then we can say to the later seasons when it gets really dark. Here, this is everything from Tony's perspective and everything from his rise to power. And I can't get enough of this episode. So let's get into this.
Yeah.
Because we are on the clock and spaghetti is boiling. So let's jump into the chat one more second. Sam says, it's fine. I know this is like 15 years behind, so no need to worry about conscious. I appreciate that. And just like with the Game of Thrones, this is looser than the Game of Thrones one. I do like to talk about future stuff for perspective, but a few major things I might significantly leave out if we can. But thank you for that perspective. Spoiler warning ahead. If you haven't watched The Sopranos, we might spoil everything. Okay, so this episode was originally aired on Valentine's Day, 1999. And it's funny that it was Valentine's Day because a love affair, Tony being romantically linked to somebody or having some sort of affection, is a very big element of this episode. Also with Tony and Carmela's anniversary being in this episode, it's very heavy. It's love, the love episode. But Christopher's only in it for 1 second to tell Tony about the Hesh thing.
Right. And I guess I never realized until we're watching it now and paying attention how many of these early episodes that happens. And we haven't had really good Polly yet at any point. We haven't had really good Sil yet for more than like a minute or two at a time. Later, there's episodes dedicated to them, or like huge chunks of episodes dedicated.
And some could say the greatest Soprano episode of all time is dedicated to them.
Where Tony's in the background for that episode.
Where Tony's in the complete background in that whole entire episode, dealing with bullshit with his new Gumar.
And the Russians, like on the side.
The Russians, but really that's kind of that is a good scene, and I agree. You can't have a great Sopranos episode with no Tony. That would be near to impossible unless his name is Kevin Finnery or something like that. But that's a different topic altogether. I think with this episode, it really does. It opens up at the beginning I forgot what I was going to say. I think really in the first season, they didn't know what was popular and they didn't know what to put out there. And they've probably money things too. In season 2, The Sopranos was a full-fledged hit, and especially after college. And that's the episode that really, catapulted it into more of a stratosphere of being a popular HBO series. So HBO in season 2 gave the show a lot more money that could pay for guest actors. And I also wanted to point out that you're right, not a lot of Polly at all in this first season, only in that episode with Pussy in the coffee house. But Pussy they make sure Pussy's relevant. They make sure Pussy shows up and has a couple one-liners in almost every episode. And in this episode, I know it's only for a second, but he does get the line.
And they're all there at the same time, though. The episode, I mean, all those lines they're at one table in the very beginning, and that's it.
Mm-hmm. The convo about him straight up professing his love to Melfi and him trying to get it with the prostitute was awkwardly funny, and that he's trying to convince his Gumar that to try to dress like Melfi. It's really
so awkward.
It really is awkward. Okay, so our first scene, the first scene in the episode is we get back to Kevin McAllister's father, Detective Kevin McAllister's father from Home Alone, and he's chilling in a lumber yard with a newspaper, and it's fair to say that he's always presented in a very similar fashion in this kind of place. Tony's always meeting him at a lumber yard, at a construction site, something like that. So they end up going for a walk, and it's just basically Tony getting more intel, or getting the final form of intel on Melfi that he hired her for. It's the continuation of what we saw 2 episodes ago, because the last episode was standalone, so we kind of needed that continuation. And yeah, she does girly stuff, dry cleaning, food shopping. She goes to the fancy schmancy Italian deli. What the fuck?
Yeah, he tells Tony essentially everything that could get Tony more turned on. Like, she goes to the really nice Italian place and gets the finest Italian stuff. So she's super Italian, but also super high class at the same time. Which
exactly, he can't.
Tony's just, well, if Tony could get hard, he would be getting hard at that moment, thinking about that. But
oh my goodness. So and I like the scene that Pussy was in, because I missed him last time. I always miss Pussy when it's not around. But seriously, Pussy is, we'll talk about this a lot, especially as time goes on with Pussy. He is such an important part, and we said this before, of this first season. It's easy to neglect the fact that it's a small thing, but in 1999, saying pussy in public so easily about a character just made it funny. When radio stations would be like, watch The Sopranos last night, can you believe what's happening with the pussy, or the little pussy, big pussy? There's so much pussy on this show. It became one of the building blocks of building that Sopranos aura about it, that Sopranos thing that made it such a popular show. And we can easily glaze over that, but Pussy was such an important part. My pussy, your pussy, big pussy. Oh my goodness. So okay, so we go back and forth, and he basically is pressing Tony that he wants to know what's the big deal with this Gumar. And Tony's like, I should fuck you up for what you did to that guy, and Tony's not really pissed off about it, but he gives him shit about it. And he's like, I thought it was a Gumar. It's roughing up the girl a little bit.
Yeah, and Tony acts like, no, I don't care. You know, it's not like that. I don't care about that. But then at the end, he also goes, so is she still seeing that guy? Like, he does. He throws it, and it's like foreshadowing that he's going to actually, because you don't know at this point early on that he's fallen for her like that yet until later in the episode. And
I agree with you to even more extent that I think part of it is just Tony shits on this guy. And Tony's shit on this guy all the time. If this was Paulie doing a job for him, early season Paulie or Sil or something, doing the same thing and said the same exact thing to him, Tony would have been a lot more respectful of what he had to say. And even if he beat up the guy, he'd be like, thanks for that. Or he wouldn't have given him shit for it, really. It's ultimately because this guy is such a shit bum that he wants to make this guy feel like a shit bum as much as he possibly can.
Yeah, and then tells him to go buy himself an iron at the end.
Go buy yourself an iron. Okay, so our next scene, I guess there's nothing much else to say in that scene. It's just a funny, I actually liked Kevin McAllister's father from Home Alone a little bit better in this episode because he was funny. They played him a little bit funnier, played to the actor's strengths. Lines like, yeah, the guy just pissed himself. He doesn't like those kind of guys. She like little things like that, as you were mentioning a second ago, Matt, really sprinkle Tony's mind with the thought that he has a chance with her.
Right. And again, we don't know this at this point, that he really is that into her at this, No,
and that's one of the things that the Sopranos does so well, that you never know when it's going to pull something like that, when it introduces stuff that seems useless at the time, but ends up coming back to be extremely important.
Bullshit.
What was that? What'd you say, Tony? You fucking asshole?
Bullshit. I'm sad.
Yeah, you are. Sorry, Tony. You're fucking sad. Okay, so we continue. The next part of the episode is the Melfi scene, and Melfi she's extremely important in episodes. She was only in a brief point of college, which is another reason why college feels like a different kind of Sopranos episode, and because Melfi, a scene with her and Tony, it's so essential to every episode of The Sopranos. It's the Greek chorus of The Sopranos. It echoes what's going on in the episode. It takes everything, all the themes that they introduce, and at some points, especially when we get into season 2 and season 3, it really pushes the narrative as well, where we get things he says in therapy as episode titles or episode focuses and such and things like that. Ren says Tony has a definite separation between his Gumar and his wife. Carmela accepts this, but she knows that Melfi is made from the same cloth she is. 100% Ren.
And if anything, Melfi's a more better version of her almost, like an upgrade, because she is educated. She is stuff that Tony finds, that he can't get in his Gumars.
Exactly.
Whatever happened to Gary Cooper?
So anyways, let's continue. This scene is a really awesome scene between Melfi and Tony. She comes through the double doors. I love all their scenes in this episode. Ready, Tony wrestles a paper bag, sets a coffee cup in front of her. Melfi taps her hand on her knees uncomfortably and then asks, so how was your college trip? Do you think Tony's really crossing a line? And this is one of those things that kind of bothers me about therapy, because I've gone to therapy. Little things like this. Oh, you want a piece of gum? I cannot accept a gift from you. Like, what the like at one point, like, I understand who Tony is and what Tony.
Well, that's the thing, is this isn't you. This isn't me. This is Tony Soprano.
That's a good question for you, Matt. If you or I are going to Melfi, is she getting upset that we're bringing her coffee? I think so. I still think she's getting, because it's against protocol. And it's just one of those things that kind of bothers me.
Yeah, but try being her, though, at the same time. How many creepy guys have probably latched onto her over the years?
Fair enough.
And it started with a coffee, and then they're fixing her car, and then they're beating the boyfriend up. And
now my question for you, Matt, is as a teacher, a student couldn't bring you an apple now, could they? Like,
sure they do. The kids around Christmas time, they bring in stuff all the
time.
time.
Do they bring you gifts? Okay, so you can still give.
Sometimes I've gotten gifts over this. It's in Lynn, so they don't have a lot of money, but no, we get gifts. Like today, the PD, the PD, he got like a whole box full of pastries from some kids.
I remember when we were kids, like our crossing guard back at our elementary school. Matt and I went to elementary school together. We would get like her a gift. I
never did that, but
we would get her like a box of chocolates or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's fair to say that Tony just comes from that old school philosophy. As someone you work with, you're getting coffee, you get coffee from them too. And Carmela does too. And someone, just to connect to something later in the series, it's something that a teacher actually calls Carmela on. That's manipulation. It's manipulation without even knowing it. And Carmela's like, that's just what you do for people you care about. And that's her response to it. And I think
why would Tony know the protocol for that sort of relationship with a therapist? He'd have no idea. No one in his world has that idea. No one else he knows goes to therapy.
Exactly. Oh, and I forgot to mention, as we were earlier, if anybody is checking out this podcast at any time, you can always join our live chat. We've got a couple of good people in the chat right now talking back and forth and sharing their thoughts and questions about this episode. You can also always email me at igotissuesman@gmail.com, or you can use the call, voicemail, text line at 781-990-8509. And also, you'll know when you hear this what the next episode. We'll answer questions about any Sopranos episode. So if you ever have a Sopranos question or comment you want to leave a message for, feel free to do it at any time you listen or watch this episode. Sorry, I forgot to set that stuff at the beginning. And Sam says she also bought families bought stuff for the crossing guard. Okay, so she changed the subject. How's college trip? And Tony jokingly says, my life's like an episode of Provolone or something like that. I assume that show is without even having to explain what kind of show it is, you'd know what kind of show it is. I guess he's like a Family Matters, a cheesy where everything goes wrong or something that's about Italian people. So everyone loves Raymond or something, like some show. It's like an episode of Provolone. So what's going on? He fiddles with his coffee, explains they have a fight, that she's jealous of you because you told her why you told her you were female. It's this back and forth that eventually ends up being that Carmela, or that she asks Tony, or Tony is always going down the same paths, that he only can take advice, that he can only really interact with other Italian people.
Yeah, but she says to him, he says, oh, you blew it. You called up and told her, I wouldn't have gotten in trouble except you called up and you kind of blew it. And she says to him, why didn't you tell him it was a woman? And then she goes into the whole, that the people, how does she phrase it? Like about, he talks about Carmela and his mother and how it's all these strong women that
what do all these strong women have in common?
Yeah.
And why'd you pick me? Why an Italian? Two Jewish guys and a paisan, so I picked myself the paisan. It's
I'm exhausted just talking about it.
Yeah, you do. Sorry. But so Melfi changed her tactics again. What's the one thing your mother, your wife, and the daughter all have in common? And Tony has an amazing line. I wish I had a sound clip of that. They all break my balls. Just such a perfect line that I think every man can relate to. Tony cracks and Melfi has a chuckle, or all people in a relationship with anybody. Just to be clear, they all break. Anyone that's close, family breaks your balls. It just happens to be because we'll say with Tony's family, AJ definitely gets to be the worst one eventually, and the one that he has the biggest problems with.
Oh my God. Like, I'm really enjoying these first episodes with no AJ.
I'm sorry about that. So yeah, you're really enjoying these first episodes because he's not around, right?
Yeah, and the one episode he was in a lot, like the acting was so atrocious. They probably said, "Hey kid, why don't you take a couple episodes off?" After the whole one where we finds out that Tony's in the mafia.
Yeah, I don't want to disappoint you, but from looking a little bit ahead, I think next week might be a little different. We might be back to AJ Central here. Okay, so let's continue. What's the one thing? Okay, so they're all Italian. So why Italian? Perhaps you're old-fashioned. He says, perhaps I'm just old-fashioned. Melfi suggests that maybe coming clean with her, Tony is dialoguing with the other women in his life. Tony doesn't think much of this theory, and he turns the tables asking Melfi, why him? Most people on the street that see me just walk in the other direction. But
they go like 100 miles out of their way or something to get away from me, to not have me look at them. And he goes, so why did you choose me as a patient?
You didn't flinch. And he gets, and again, he seems real turned on by this.
He's so turned on by that. Again, I didn't realize he was turned on by that until a little bit later in the episode.
And let's connect to a question that Ren Renwood has in the chat. The more interesting question is why Melfi consented to having Tony as a patient. I think because he is dangerous and Melfi likes that. I agree with you 100%. And it's something it's almost a throwaway line and the later half of the series, because spoiler alert, this isn't the last we see of Tony trying to get Melfi. Other things happen later, and there's another kind of interaction that the two of them have that's similar later in the series. And she gets more raw later in the series because she knows him more. And she explains at the beginning, she was attracted to him. So some part of her, I think, is correct that at this very beginning point, she is kind of turned on by the danger of Tony. And we live in this alternate world where Tony is very attractive to all women, especially.
Well, not only that, but it's also attractive from the standpoint of being a therapist, a psychiatrist, to have, let's say she's not physically attracted to Tony. That's still like a cool thing to be the therapist. Like, oh, I get to be the therapist for a mafia. Like, if it was Junior, she would have been turned on by the idea of being a therapist to a mafia kingpin, I think. Like, that's.
I agree.
Regardless of if she finds Tony physically attractive, which again is something we've talked about, how the hell all these women end up banging Tony is out of our minds, but whatever.
Really, I would think after he throws himself at her, he would just give up after that. And
that shocked me.
Yeah. And he doesn't give up easily. And she doesn't give up easily either, as we get into.
And she has to have the fear. What if she cuts Tony off at that point?
Yep. She doesn't understand that she's almost untouchable to him to a certain extent eventually. I do think it's really effective that the show adds this in the second season. And I think it's in the second season. I'm pretty sure we don't get it before then. Her therapy scenes. When we get into her and
Elliot.
Yeah, Elliot. He is awesome. And his reaction to everything she says, and you get a lot more Sam.
Her reaction to him is amazing too.
Yeah, there's some of the best scenes in every episode when her and Elliot are interacting. And it's something for Sam that you can look forward to get to know Melfi more, because they do explore her family, her perspective, where her mind's coming from in a lot of different kinds of situations without spoiling what actually happens. So there is a lot more her to explore. So let's continue. So we get into the poker game. My Girl's playing in the background. I hate that song.
Great music in this whole episode, though. It was really a big part of the show, of like every scene.
So this is, we can just kind of quickly talk about this scene and yada yada this a little bit. It is a scene where Mikey shows up at a poker game that some person that works within the family is hosting a poker game, and instead of paying to Tony, to Junior, to anybody, paying out to that game protection money, which they're supposed to work under with certain players, as we learn a lot more about this later on too. There's a certain percentage that needs to be kicked up. No one's kicking up to this game to anybody. To Jimmy Altieri, that's the main guy. This guy's particular captain. To nobody. And Mikey, as Tony mentions later in the episode, Junior has one here. Junior's doing the same thing. We get the big line: Junior Soprano's the new boss, and he ain't respecting old arrangements. So then, right to the next scene, we see Junior at the tailor, and he's standing around, and this is a pretty sick scene because
it's such a great Junior scene.
It really is. It's essentially Junior in a I'm Junior. I'm in a nutshell, to steal a Austin Powers joke, to steal a Mike Myers joke. But it really is Junior in a nutshell. He has a huge heart, and he really cares about people, but he's very narrow-minded and doesn't look at the big picture,
right?
At all. And that's probably why he got passed over, and why Johnny was ahead of him. Why Richie? Why not? I did it again. Why Jackie was ahead of him. There's so many people, so many reasons that you see why Junior ends up being cast over, because he is very reactive.
And this is like an old school scene. It's Junior. He's getting a suit made for him by a tailor that he's obviously known for most of his adult life. I can't, like an old Italian tailor. He's probably known forever.
And I can't say enough, because this is probably the best Mikey episode too. Mikey's great in that scene at the poker table. Before we go over there, he's really threatening and funny in that scene. And him in this scene with Junior, this eventually becomes Bobby, and that's hilarious on a different level. But Mikey and Junior also have a really fun chemistry, and that Junior's just like, shut up, when he's like, oh, that was your kid that got, he was.
They do a great job of making you hate Mikey at all times, though.
Yeah, they really do. They really do. Whereas the opposite with Bobby, they go out of their way to make you love Bobby.
Right.
And I can't wait till we get to that Bobby and Junior Curb Your Enthusiasm scene. One of my favorite moments in the entire series. Okay, so we get Junior's basically getting a new suit, and we find out from this tailor that his grandson OD'd on some drugs, or was high on some designer drugs, and jumped off the falls. The same falls that we see Pussy and Hesh bring somebody out in episode 1, I think it is, or episode 2.
Who the hell did they bring out there?
I forget who it is. It wasn't important, but I remember us dwelling on the fact that
it was the guy with the broken leg that Tony had run over at the very beginning of the episode. Yes. Remember when he brings him out there, and you're going to either do this thing for us or, right, the racket with the insurance company.
Yeah.
Yes,
it was. Okay, so
and this is one of the best Junior lines when he's up there too. He's talking to the guy, and the guy working on it, before we get into his grandson, is asking him why he's getting the suit. He goes, "Oh, the guys are having a little thing for me. Okay, like they're having a party for me,
having a time for me. I think
they're having a time for me." And I forget the exact way he phrases it, but he says, "These kids, they want to be buried in their tracksuits." I think that's what he says. You know, so he's like an old school guy. He's having the night for him. He's going to get the finest suit he can possibly get at the time. You know, a tailor-made old school Italian suit.
Yes, and thank you, McDicker. McDicker, welcome, my boy Mikey, the insurance guy. Welcome, my friend. Oh my goodness.
And Mikey is always in a tracksuit, like in the show.
Mm-hmm.
So he's making fun of Mikey when he says that too.
Oh, good play. I didn't see it that way. Good one. So his son, and anytime I hear the name Ralphie on The Sopranos, I don't care if it's Ralphie or not, I get a little excited. Not want to get too into Ralphie because Sam hasn't experienced it yet. So it's you need to experience the Ralphie yourself, played by Joey Pants, who shows up, I believe, in season 3. But we're way far away from that. But the name Ralphie, it's his oldest son, Ralphie. He lost a grandson, and ultimately, the kid that used to run around breaking balls, the tailor weeps. Dominic, my namesake. Junior turns back to Mikey and asks him if he knew about this. Mikey at first is like, no. Junior says, well, what do I say about this poison? Gets into no, drugs are bad. And the funniest part of this is is ultimate. Mikey, a born diplomat. Mikey's like, he's 14 years old and he used those designer rugs. His head was bashed against the rock for days. And
yeah, that kid. No, the old guy says it wasn't an overdose. He had these designer drugs, and Mikey's like, oh yeah, the kid jumped off the cliff. His head just kept, as he's spiraling down, kept bouncing off the rocks.
Suddenly, Mikey starts caring about it, and he's in the conversation all of a sudden. Oh yeah, and he was slipping down. That was awful. Just like earlier when we see him talking to Jackie, and Junior kind of waves him off.
The old guy's sitting there, like staring at him, the tailor, as he's talking about his grandson's head bashing off the rocks 50 times, and Junior gives him the look like, "What the hell's the matter with you?"
And he says, this piece of shit gets to walk the streets and sell more of that stuff to young kids. Junior says that gets that furious Junior look in his face and goes, oh, really? What's that motherless fuck's name?
Such a great line.
Such a great Junior line. That's why I would say at the beginning, Matt, this is we get the most Junior. This scene, we're going to get to it in the, it's right, this next scene.
So you can feel that he knows he suddenly has this power. He's loving it. You know, he's like, what's the motherless fuck's name? Like, he can do whatever he wants now.
Yeah, it's like if you win money on a scratch ticket or something like that, and you suddenly go, oh my goodness, this means I can go buy the $300 bottle of scotch because I just made enough money. Right. You know, it just makes you feel very happy. So, okay, let's get to, it might be my favorite scene of the episode, Livia and Junior. And Livia's gazing fondly at Junior, who's slipping from a China cup, and saying, even the coffee's old in here. Livia shrugs it out. Eventually, you can't complain. Eventually, they find you with a broken hip. It's just like stand-up comedy between the two of them. It's just really funny stuff. Junior bitches more and about, I got to get you a coffee machine so you can make some good coffee. And then some person rolls around, and I don't want to go line for line, but this is just fucking hilarious. It goes, oh, hi, Livia. Are you new here? And Junior goes, keep walking, pal.
Yeah. Well, you already see that Livia's already starting to fit in a little bit of the place because the guy's talking to her and notices her, and she interacts with him and knows him, where she was miserable when she first got there.
Yep. And to go back to our last scene, McDicker says, yeah, he couldn't possibly have given more details about the death. Seems less concerned. Classic Mikey. And oh my God, Ren, that's funny. And he probably needs a closed casket. Sam says, I love Livia in this episode, especially when she said the Junior becomes her puppet and she basically tells him how to run his family. And that the activity lady knows her. Yeah, the activity lady is hunting her down because she knows if she actually finds Livia's going to have a good time. But the way she manipulates Junior here is next level awesome. And this is where Junior is not, we talk about this a lot. Junior is pig-headed and laser focused at sometimes, but he's not ignorant to what Livia is doing. He knows Livia is manipulating him. He's just thinking, well, she did this for Johnny, so I need that too, as he's wearing Johnny's cologne and stuff too. Yep.
Plus, she's old school. Like, he doesn't have, you just saw it the last episode. He can't relate to these kids and their drugs and anything else. And she's, I can't think of someone else that he interacts with that's like directly tied to the old school and understands his way of thinking.
No, we see it a couple of times throughout the series, like when we see Bobby's dad, or we see a couple of other characters that show up and Feach Lamada.
Remember that other guy that was supposed to bring him later on to the doctors, but kept forgetting.
Yeah,
they're getting senile at this point.
Yeah, that guy. I forget his name. Oh, the guy that takes over for Bobby when Bobby gets more responsibilities. Sam says, wait, this may be a stupid question, but what actual relationship does he have to Livia, like family-wise? Sister-in-law. She was married to
Tony's father was Junior's brother.
Was Junior's younger brother and was above him in the pecking order, got more responsibilities, was actually a boss or a head of ran his own crew, where Junior was always his kind of second in command.
Right. And then Junior probably took over his father's crew. I mean, his brother's crew would be my guess, right?
When Johnny probably took over more boss responsibilities before he died, or something like that,
because he was never boss. Tony says that early on, like he ran his own crew, but he was never like the top guy. So
that makes sense that a lot of Johnny's old crew is probably those guys that are Junior's crew that will see that we see when Tony goes to see Junior in the coffee house and all those kind of older dudes that are hanging around, that are all yes men, that are Johnny's and Junior's yes men. So, okay, so Livia basically, it's just a funny scene between the two of them, and she tells him he smells like a French whore because he's wearing the cologne that Johnny wore, and just shows how he's trying to get in Johnny's pants, so to speak, with everything. Talking to Livia, but Livia's probably nicer to Junior than she ever was to Johnny, to be quite honest. So ultimately, this all leads to him leaving or her making a suggestion: don't let anyone get over on you. And he goes, no one will get over on me. No one got over Johnny too. And then she just changed the subject quickly, and this is a Livia move. Well, how's your Jewish friend? It's just this weird transition that she likes to do. In this manipulation transition. She does it later to Artie Bucco too, a similar kind of thing. And she just says it, and Tony's like, or Junior goes, Hesh? I don't know. What are you saying about Hesh? Are you he's not my friend, he's Tony's friend. And she goes, yep, my husband loved that guy, and Tony thinks every word he says is great. Livia is so good because she doesn't actually ever say it. She just, and I didn't even get that the first time I was watching it. I didn't get what she was inferring. But Junior does, and Junior immediately goes, are you saying I need to tax Hesh? And he finds it amusing because he looks at it as what it is. You're just fucking with Tony. You really want to clunk his cojones here because of him putting you into this place. You know what's going on. You're a pretty smart woman. And she goes, no, I'm a blathering idiot. And he goes, yeah, and I'm paying shortstop for the Mets.
Right. But she also probably thought for years that her own husband got screwed over because he never paid.
Yeah, because he had some arrangement with Hesh, because Hesh is a good businessman, is a good way of, as we see towards the end of the episode, he obviously lays in on that guilt to Tony, and probably did the same thing with Tony's father about you don't fuck with my money here. Come on.
Right. And she also says, whoever heard of a Jew riding horses, like when they're having the conversation.
Okay, so then we get to Tony's Gumar arena as we get a funny line with, watch the balls. And we can kind of yada yada this scene a little bit. There's a couple of funny lines where he's saying, you communist fuck, like when they get into a fight. There's a couple of classic Tony lines. But I mean, there's not too much to this scene, actually. You know?
Shut up, Your Honor. Let me talk.
Okay, I'm sorry, Tony. Basically, Tony can't get it up is basically what the scene is about. She comes in, jumps on him to be like, okay, let's get it on, and he can't do it, and he kind of plays it off in that way where he gets pissed off about something he's not really angry about because his equipment doesn't work, and she calls him out on it, which starts a fight. And I mean, that's anything else you want to say about that scene? There's a fun.
No, he says, why can't we talk? But that Tony doesn't want to talk.
He doesn't want to talk. He doesn't. No. He doesn't give two shits. I think that whole scene can be summed up with the line, with the end line where it is, you burned me, you Russian bastard. No, it's where's the line?
That's the other scene. That's the scene when she dresses up.
Oh yeah, I think it's the same scene in this episode. I think it's only one scene. I'll knock you out, you communist cunt. And to sum up that whole scene, because he asks her to dress up. You're right, Matt. That's
later.
Is it later?
Yeah, that's a separate episode because this is before he's had the dreams at this point.
Okay, you're right, Matt. You're absolutely right. So, but the funniest part or the element of this scene is you're talking to me, you're treating me like some dildo. No, if you were a dildo, we wouldn't be fighting.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it's a really great line.
And then he throws money at her, and she says, "I'm not a prostitute," whatever, and leaves. Okay. So we're at Satriali's, and we see that it's actually Satriali's. We know it is because it's in. Because you see, it's a Christopher. He's in where she's actually cutting meat inside the deli, right?
Yeah, he is. We cut over to Christopher. Sam says, wait, okay, thanks. The Jewish guild is a powerful thing. Believe me, I know. Believe me and believe Matt. We know. And imagine Tony trying to get hard is so awkward for me, says Sam. And Matt, you're kind of echoing. Oh, never mind. It's fixed. The echoey thing is just the Google Hangouts. We always have a nicer sounding audio version of this that you can download on issuesprogram.com or find the feed in the description below and or find us on iTunes. And that's usually a much better audio quality, but a Google Hangouts just gets all echoey sometimes for some reason. So yeah, we go over to Satriali's and Christopher's sporting the V-neck tank top, And it's just, we get the feeling that Christopher is very well liked by everyone in the Bing staff. That's just the only thing to take from that.
Satriales, not the Bing.
From Satriales, thank you. And I'm sure the Bing staff too, but everyone loves Christopher because he's probably been the kid that's been hanging out there forever. And Mick Dicker says, Prozac really does do that kind of antidepressant thing. I would agree with that. And that makes you more depressed than ever. I would say that I have experimented, or when I was going through some crap with that, and I had a similar reaction to some antidepressants.
Well, nothing clears up depression like emasculating you at the same time, right?
Very true. And Mick Dicker knows. And
it's a hell of a name. You would definitely know.
So Christopher, this is where we get the line from Pussy that I've eaten more queens than Lancelot. Thank you. Good night, everybody. And Christopher basically comes in and tells him that Hesh wants to talk to him, and he's like, "Tell Hesh to come inside." No, he wants to talk to you outside. What are they playing, by the way? Are they playing?
It's Medeski, Martin, and Wood.
Oh, is it really?
Well, the music in the background is.
Yeah, it is? Okay, yeah. Interesting. And that's what, okay, so that's why you're like, this is the best episode music-wise.
Well, I heard that. When even the dream sequences, there's great music playing throughout the entire thing. Even when Junior is with Livia, you can hear the music in the background. It's like really old-timey music. That whole shot when they were in the home with Livia is great. Like the two of them sitting at that table together.
It really is. You can't say enough good things about the sound design on The Sopranos, from the music that they picked to fit each scene. It really set the standard for a lot of things to come. And that was one of the elements of drama that really carried through from The Sopranos that you see in shows at its best, shows like Sons of Anarchy, Breaking Bad, things like that, where the music plays such an important role. And I would say The Sopranos really influenced a lot of programming in doing that, more so than it influenced it in some other ways.
And yet the music was always, the weird thing about The Sopranos, and I know I brought this up a bunch of times, as opposed to Breaking Bad, is it was always the background though, and it wasn't like a driving force. But they just did a great, it just complemented all the scenes.
Complemented. Good, very good point, Matt. And here we go. So ultimately we get some really fun, quick stuff with the guys, like with Pussy and all the guys at the table. But Matt's right. We don't really get a lot of that. It's just one scene and we're done. And also, Matt, I was also curious, do you know what card game they were playing?
Oh, no, I didn't see what card game.
It was probably gin, bridge, some version of bridge or something. At first I thought it was poker, but then when I watched the scene, thinking about the episode before rewatching it, I thought it was poker in my memory, but it definitely wasn't poker. Definitely it wasn't the poker. Okay, so Tony goes out and finds Hesh, and just to sum this whole situation up, Hesh is, I appreciate it. Hesh is really good in this scene because he comes there and he's like, Tony, your father was a fair man, you're a fair man, your uncle not so fair. And he wants to tax me, Tony. It's almost like in the way he leads up to Hesh, he's like, Hesh, you just get to the fucking point already. Right. And Hesh is basically ultimately, this is serious.
Which Junior tells Tony to do later on in the episode.
It's
when he's
funny.
Octavius, you know what I mean? Like they're all long-winded and won't get to the fucking point.
Just get to the fucking point already. And he's taxing me, Tony. And Hesh has a fair point. He goes, when you become boss, you can either respect the old rules or make rules for yourself. I'm not objecting the fact that he's taxing me. That you Sopranos didn't tax me for so long, and I thank you for that, but I fully accept that I will get a tax. It's just the amount.
And you see how just intelligent, his understanding of that, knowing when he comes into play. Like you just realize how intelligent Hesh is and how much he knows. He knows this whole game, the whole hustle.
Yep. And he basically says, I have to leave. He kind of guilts Tony into doing something for him. He goes, I'm going to leave. If you don't do what I want, I'm leaving. And Tony's like, you're not leaving. You won't get away from this action. I remember, and this comes back later, I have 6 gold. I think it's 6 gold records.
6 gold records, yeah.
6 gold records. Heshy, you didn't write 6 gold records. You had some poor schmuck working for you that wrote 6 gold records. And
6 black kids, he says, wrote records.
6 black kids wrote records, and you put yourself a co-writing credit on it.
Yeah,
it's a kind of funny scene. It does come back later to and does it come back later this season or is it next? I think it's this season actually.
No, it's much later. I think.
Much later? We're gonna find out. I want to say that episode comes quicker.
No, because Adriana ends up having something to do with.
Right, Adriana already has the club at that point. You're right, Matt.
Well, no, because she's dealing with that kid too. They have that kind. they have a deal, and he's playing. Remember, she's playing her band for the kid that goes after Hesh.
I can't wait to get to that stuff.
Whatever. Sorry.
I think I'm confusing it with D Girl, but
yeah. All right.
Okay. So no. Mick Dicker says no. It's this season. Okay.
Really?
So, no. Maybe we have that to look forward to.
That also means more Adriana. That's not a bad thing.
That's never a bad. More Adriana Adriana wearing less and more of her is never a bad thing, right, Matt? Okay.
Absolutely.
So Tony and Carmela sleep. We zoom in on Tony and we zoom in again to see him in Irina's bed, surrounded by candles. There's doo-wop music. Matt mentioned this earlier. The music is really excellent. The way that they sync it up to Tony singing along to the music, it's just excellent editing from an editing perspective. It just all works really perfect to the point where he's getting head. And the only thing that's uncomfortable again is watching James Gandolfini get pleasure. It's not something I would ever want to do, but it's something you have to suffer through. It's one of those pills, big ugly pills you need to swallow when watching The Sopranos. You have to accept that you're going to see a lot of James Gandolfini in compromising positions. A lot of him.
But who would you want to see get pleasured? What guy would you want to watch?
I don't know. I wouldn't. If we're going for the show, I would by far have less of a problem seeing Christopher in similar.
Yeah. Or AJ, but that's uncomfortable.
Or AJ or Sil even, because he would make it funny.
That's because you wish it was you pleasuring Sil. That's the problem.
Exactly. Tell me about Bruce. Tell me about Max Weinberg again. But ultimately, it's Tony is like the worst option for me. No, maybe
Bobby
Bacala or Vito as we get to Vito later. So, or original Vito, like Fat Vito. Yeah. So, okay, so Tony and Carmela are sleeping. We see Tony grinning and sings along the song, and someone's coming up onto other sheets from going down on him, and he looks up. We hear Irina's voice, and it is in fact not Irina. It is Lorraine Bracco and Melfi. It's and Melfi says in a weird dubbed Russian accent, "Tony, I love your cannoli." He wakes up to hearing Carmela say, "Are you okay?" Or is this when she says, "You want sex"?
No, that's later. That's later.
Okay.
That's the second dream.
That's the second dream. He says, "Are you okay?" And he tells her to go back to sleep. And, "Are you sure you're all right?" And she asks again. And Sam says, "Haha, there's not much of a choice for guys on this show.
No.
I'll keep my eye candy to Game of Thrones." Yeah, there for males, I guess, and we're gonna get into it later. As someone pointed out, doesn't Furio look like Data in the comment section? I think he does. Now you say that, I think so.
He does with short, with long hair.
I guess Furio and Christopher, and then we eventually get Vinny from or what is his, I forget what his character's name is on the show, but
no, but he's Vinny from Doogie Howser.
Vinny from Doogie Howser, that are all kind of good-looking guys, I guess.
Oh, and the kid from A Bronx Tale that's now in jail.
C from A Bronx Tale eventually comes in the show, and some could say Jackie Jr. is an attractive man.
But we don't watch this show to fantasize about the men, so
no. But none of these people are guy or girl, regardless of what we think about Adriana or Meadow in later seasons. No one's really attractive or beautiful in this show.
No, the Bing girls, but they're not really characters.
Yeah, they are characters, and they're not really real girls. I mean, those aren't real. What we're seeing,
none of it is actually real. You're right.
Those are CG boobs. I think they just have big green. They're not even implants. They all have like green screen boobs on, and they George Lucas the boobs and all the Bada Big girls. Oh gosh, Alley Boy is good looking. And there's a couple people here and there in the show, and I would say for girls, our best looking comes later in D Girl. She's probably the most attractive girl for me that was on the show. And I know you're an Adriana person, but I was team Christopher with the D Girl episode. I'm a fan of that actress from an attractive standpoint. So the double posting is just on your perspective, Mick Dicker. For some reason, it does that sometimes, but we're not actually seeing double. We're not seeing double, Mick Dicker. I've always wanted to say that, and I never knew. We're not seeing double, Mick Dicker.
Right, that's like a line from like Spaceballs.
Yeah, it would totally be a line from Spaceballs or something. So Carmela says you're okay. So we go back to the Manhattan skyline, and we see a mandolin player in a bar. A guy in a tan blazer asks Tony, "So what do you want New York to do?" Tony fiddles his little ring, and we finally meet our Johnny Sack. And basically it's Tony spelling out what he wants Johnny Sack to do. He wants Johnny Sack to act like Hesh came to him to mediate and to basically do his agenda and say it was coming from him. And Johnny Sack is our basic New York representative for most of the season.
I love how they introduced it. Just the only way you know that is he just goes, "What do you want New York to do?" And that's it. And like right there, you know who Johnny Sack is. You know.
Right. Absolutely. And you also, the way he says, "Oh, you are still running things." You also get a little bit more of understanding. He's probably a little conniving, probably just always trying to get ahead in the situation. And I like Johnny Sack.
He's a great character. Whether you like his character or not, the actor is great as he's amazing.
The only thing that's uncomfortable about Johnny Sack is, not spoilers, the way his character arc concludes is very uncomfortable for me to watch from a visual standpoint. The way it comes out in that final episode he has is very hard to watch.
But it's great. It's so well done.
So great. Such great acting. But it's on that verge of when you watch, not the same exact thing, but like when you watch Requiem for a Dream, and it's a movie I'll never watch twice, but I'll never say it was a bad movie. It's all of Aronofsky's movies I could say that about. I'd never watched twice. But he's very good at giving you that kind of feeling. And I think The Sopranos, with the conclusion of the Johnny Sack arc, really...
I have only gone and got scorpion bowls with my wife one time, and we went and got that. It was after we saw Black Swan, because we were like, we got to go get a drink.
Yeah, we need to drink. We need to drink. Absolutely. Mick Dicker says, I love Livia's term for him, the snake from New York. Ren says, I do love little Steven, but that's because of his other job with Springsteen. Absolutely. Sill's not a great actor. The fact that he's a good character. And I think the reason why he got brought onto the show and was originally going to read for Tony when David Chase's first perspective for this was because David Chase thought about it probably more comedic, more like Lilyhammer's actually ended up being, where it's just he's Sill all the time.
Why the hell would he go pick someone who's never acted before? That always blows my mind. Like, why did they think of that? But he's actually great as Sill. He's like perfect.
He's the perfect Sill. He would have been a horrible Tony.
Oh yeah.
He would have been a horrible Tony. But he's my favorite part of the of Springsteen's band. I just love him. He just has so much style. He's just a great guy. I remember before I even knew who he was, I pointed that guy in the band. I'm like, I like that guy. He's really cool. And if you know his story, he always shows up and leaves at his own request. He never actually quit the band. He's just like, I'm sick of this for a while, and he leaves, and then he just shows back up. He says, Bruce never really says anything to me. I just show up, I come back. I heard there's a really cool interview with him on the Howard Stern show, if you haven't heard it, where you get to know a lot more about him as an actor and how the whole situation happened. And and as a performer, he's a very interesting, quirky dude that's very Sill-like in real life. So that snake from New York and he leaves, and he eventually goes back over to Carmela, who's sitting at a table all pissed off. And again, I think it's something that most people can relate to. So Carmela's just sitting there really pissed off, and Tony's like, oh, how's the veal? And she's like rubber. And he goes over and eats it. Tastes good to me. And then they come and serenade the two of them, and he's just...
and it's sent over from Johnny, who holds his glass up to him.
Holds his glass up. It's just a really uncomfortable situation because Carmela is really cold and really pissed off about him going over to talk to Johnny Sack for 10 minutes. She goes, well, we're going to get a room. This is our anniversary, not yours. It's your and mine anniversary, not yours, mine, and Johnny fucking Sack. We're going to go to the plaza, get a room. I thought maybe we could do it tonight. Okay, Tony, forget about it. And... okay, what's your opinion of this, Matt? Could Tony have just let this alone for one fucking night? Are you on Carmela's side in this situation?
Well, obviously she's going to be pissed off about it. What do you think? She's going to be fine with it? Again, you always come to the defense that she knew what she was signing up for when she married Tony Soprano.
But I think yes, and I think Tony walking over and talking to a friend for 10 minutes isn't
on your anniversary. You're gonna leave your wife sitting at a table by herself for 10 minutes.
10 minutes
by yourself in the middle of the meal when she's got the fucking veal in front of her. You leave for 10 minutes. That's ridiculous.
If you're in the military, and if we're going to accept that the mafia is some form, the way Tony looks at it as a perspective, and you get a call and you have to run away from whatever situation you're at, even your family, to go fulfill whatever. When they call you on the phone, when they call you,
and the thing was this too. They were in New York too. That's why he talked.
It was an easy moment. He probably said, "Carmela, I'll be back in 5 minutes." He took 10 minutes. I'm just saying,
I see both sides to it.
He was trying hard. He wasn't being usual Tony. Tony's been a lot worse for human being to her.
I know, but she's already worried that he's cheating on her more so.
That's why she's pissed. Exactly, Matt.
And he can't get it up, and all this stuff's happening. She really feels like she's losing him at this point. You just put it in perfect perspective. He can't get it up, so Carmela's not getting her once a week that she needs or whatever. So or feeling like Tony's pushing himself on her, or their anniversary, he's not excited about that or pushing the issue. He's pissed off about this Melfi stuff. If none of that was going on, he just went over to talk to Johnny Stack for 10 minutes, who eventually buys them a romantic song for the moment. She probably would have been okay with it. It wasn't so much, I think, anything to do with her talking to Johnny Stack. Let's jump in the chat for 1 second. Ren says, Tony is trying so hard to give Carmela a nice anniversary, but she's having none of it. For one night, she wants to be the center of his attention, but Tony is like a doctor who's never off duty. Yeah, as cold as her dress. Sam says, yeah, I understand why she's mad, but that really doesn't put forth an effort to make up. And I guess that's what's important. She deserves to be mad in that situation. I understand both perspectives too. Like I said, we haven't got to really bad Carmela yet to me. But I mean, I think when you're married to some guy like Tony, he's never off duty, and you know that. And you knew that going in. He's just that type of person. You're in New York. Johnny Sack is there. He's going to kill two birds with one stone. He's just one of those kind of people. And Carmela's not that gooey-ooey that this is that big of a deal to her. And she loves the fucking money and lifestyle that his job allows her to have.
Exactly. So this helps put food on your table. And Tony was, and I just mean Tony was really actually.
Even if it tastes like rubber, the veal.
Yep. And okay, I know he is a lying cheat. Oh my gosh. Oh my God. So anyways, Tony settles and he was mutters and I was there for 10 fucking minutes and don't do this. Should I call and he eventually apologizes and she kind of relents, but he says, should I call the plaza for tonight? And she goes, no, let's just go home. So they go back to the garage. Carmela unbuckles the car,
Well, no, he explains to her.
He explains to her.
Right? Was it when they're in the car, or is it here when he explains to her about the Prozac? He tries to explain about the.
I think it ends up coming. It's in the car. It's in this next scene. The Mercedes pulls into the garage as Carmela unbuckles and prepares to go out. Tony says, "Here, Carm, come on." Carmela says, "What? You don't want me to say? I don't know. It's like you skeeve me." And she resents it. Or you've changed, Tony, and I resent it. He slumps back in his seat. She goes, I resent it because you're destroying what little self-esteem I have. She had, sometimes I think you skeeve her. And Tony's like, skeeve? What? You're the mother of my child. Fuck, how can I skeeve you? And Carmela bites his head off and says, you see what I'm talking about right there? You're the mother of my children. I feel like I'm just someone you've chosen to procreate with. And Tony says right here, you knew this might happen with the Prozac. So this goes back to what I was saying a second ago, where this isn't the first time they've had this conversation. It's a good moment of putting exposition in there without making it seem like exposition. This isn't the first time that this has happened, that Tony's just not usual Tony. He's changed because he's not trying to hump anything that moves all the time. As Christopher says later on, since your midlife crisis, you've tried to hump every peach of the coos that exists in your life. I love how Christopher calls about that shit later. Okay. So
she makes a reference to one of her friends that like so-and-so is on it and she'd hump a
fire hydrant.
Yeah.
She'd make a pass at her. So Tony impatiently says that Melfi said it affects different people different ways, which prompts Carmela to say, oh, she told you that, and huff off into the car, into the house. And Tony rubs his forehead and just goes, oh, fucking A. I need a drink. Ooh, that's a very good one. So he cuts to Tony performing the coffee ceremony again in Melfi's office. She watches him for a moment and she says, before we start, this is what I hate. Before we start, we need to talk about the coffee situation. Fuck. It's not appropriate to take gifts, she says. Tony stares at her and goes, it's just fucking coffee. You make the rules. And she goes, I just don't want it anymore. And Tony's like, can I drink it? Can I drink mine? And right there, the phone rings, and we get yada, yada, yada. Someone's trying to fuck with her car, and she does the right thing where she goes, fuck you, I want a second opinion. And Tony makes note of that, just to make note for it later. And then we get into a very funny scene where Tony goes, you know, I'm feeling better. I think I'm going to flush the medication. And she's like, what? You're going to flush the medication? And he goes, yeah. And I'm getting some side effects. And she just keeps naming the side effects. And he's like, nope, nope, nope. Well, some people experience a lost sexual libido. Bingo. And it's a funny exchange between the two of them because he's embarrassed to say it straight out, but he just keeps going about it. And she finally gets it. She goes, well, some people have the lost libido and they have trouble maintaining
Bingo. Bingo.
And Melfi says, but Melfi goes, have you, I don't think it's the Prozac. It might be some other, it might be something else. Have you thought about getting a proctology exam? And he goes, what's the line, Matt? I don't even
let somebody like wave a finger in my face.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
And she straight out laughs. And she says, I'm sorry. And he goes, don't apologize. Tony's real big smile, straight up starting to realize this whole situation and obviously had his first sex dream about her. Says, you have a nice laugh. And she goes, hey, I'm serious. This is probably the most flirtatious she's been with him up until the point. She's straight up flirtatious with him right here. I mean, at least, I mean, I might be rating it wrong, but he just seemed...
Well, he hasn't really crossed lines yet either. So
right, exactly. So she's just kind of opening up, getting more of a rapport with him. And
here comes the Prozac.
And here... I'm doing better with these sound drops. Anyway, so Ren says, I think she likes having the power over this dangerous man. She's trying to change the beast. I think considering where it goes with her, again, Ren, amazing point as usual. I do agree with that. And I think it's also sport for her in a sense that she can fix him. And to where it ends up, if we look at the whole Melfi arc, how it all concludes itself,
well, you find out more about her ex,
but I'm saying like the final conclusion of it, Matt, the ultimate conclusion. Yeah, and when we found out about her ex-husband, you're absolutely right. That has a lot to do with it as well. And about choosing someone and being close or having a relationship with someone that's the antithesis of what her husband hates about Italians, and that she can do something he can't by actually trying to help and reach these people. But when she finally gets the science behind that she couldn't, where it ends up going in the end, I don't want to say that. The decision she makes is very important. And I can't wait till we get to that final season because I feel like the show fucked up and made a mistake and went against character and her final decisions that she makes at the end. But we'll get there. We will get there. I don't want to get too far down that route, but I kind of do, but I'm not going to right now. Okay, so Tony says, I apologize. Melfi's in serious mode again. She informs Tony that depression is also the leading factor in impotence. She says if he ever awakens with an erection in the morning or the middle of the night, Tony tells you that you could set a clock by it. It's a funny 80s movie. I'm trying to forget what it is, but where a character's pretending to be impotent or saying that they're impotent, where someone gives them the suggestion of putting... when you pass out, put stamps around or like stickers around your penis, and then if you get an erection in the sleep, it will break the seal of it or something. And
I never heard that.
It's in a movie. It's in some.
I'm just so I'm echoing right now too. So.
Oh, do you hear yourself?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh. Let me try. Is that better, Matt?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry about that, Matt. I have to turn you up a little bit. Okay, so sorry about that. I'm not hearing it. I'm not hearing an echo, so I don't know if the audience is hearing Matt.
No, because when they heard it before, I had heard it before too when they said that earlier on. So
okay, sorry about the technical difficulties, guys. As I mentioned, there is an audio version which will have none of these little problems, but you will hear us talking about it, and you'll be like, "What the fuck? That sounded great to me." What are you talking about? The people that listen to our audio cast, which we do have some people. Thank you so much for downloading our audio cast. They're like, you guys sound perfect. I don't know what all this talk about cut streams are or anything like that. As Sam says, yeah, that was happening with me. The echoing was happening. Sorry about that, guys. Okay, so then we cut after this scene to a truck showing up that is just unloading all this stuff that Carmela is buying to make herself feel better. And she's just, this is where the counterbalance comes, where Carmela she's kind of feeding into it a little bit here, and to get back at Tony is just spending a lot of money. That's her comeback.
Can I tell you what I wrote here?
Yes.
I'm not going to say the word, but this is all I wrote was Carmela and then I wrote the word that's spelled C-U-N-T next to it. So I was on your side right here because she was such a little bitch in this scene.
Yeah, and Tony suggests joking. Tony's just already accepting it, and Tony's suggesting that they move to the store itself and
Whatever
save
it's called, yeah.
Yeah, Rocho Bowies or something, and save the delivery charge. And Carmela shrugs. Fine, I'll just send it back. I hate that shit. I fucking hate that shit. That is when I get pissed off at her. And again, she does an excellent job because people are like this. I'm like this sometimes when I'm pissed off at somebody. I get weirdly passive aggressive. Like, fine, I'll do it. And I want to punch myself. Maybe that's why I hate Carmela so much, because I see myself in her. So I get pissed off about it. But it's just, it really upsets me, this scene with her. This is like the beginning of when I'm because Tony's, again, Tony is trying. He goes, no, no.
He's doing what she wants him to do. He's in therapy. He's on Prozac. He's moving up in the world. His best friend just died. He's dealing with his crazy mother, and this is how she's acting. Yeah,
and he goes, no, I'm not saying to send it back, but you've been spending like a drunken sailor all week. And she goes, no, I'll send it back. And she like says it really bitchy. She goes, I said I'll send it back. And Tony goes, Mother of Christ, Carmela, I didn't say that. Jesus. And then stomps into the house. Carmela looks smug as shit, and she just watches them move stuff in. I feel so bad for Tony in this scene, to be honest. I feel fucking bad for Tony.
Did you fucking do it?
No, I didn't do it, Tony. Carmela did it.
You understand?
Yeah, I understand, Tony. I'm sorry, buddy. I feel really bad for him in this moment. And I feel like no matter what he does, he's kind of up against it with Carmela sometimes. And it's because she's still processing. And something about Carmela is she's hot and cold. When she takes time to process things, and then she'll come back even at the end of this episode where she's like, this is her processing the Melfi thing and processing that he has another strong, smart woman in his life that isn't just some whore.
Who's probably smarter and
more successful
than him.
Exactly. Someone that, as we get future into the Meadow and Carmela arc, that's more like what Meadow ends up becoming.
Right, because she can call all the Gumas just whores and not be jealous of them. You know what I mean? Oh, they're sluts. I'm better than them. I'm better than them. I'm better than them.
I got my real estate degree. I'm better than them.
Yeah.
But she's just, she's just a smarter, stronger individual when it comes down to it. But then you meet people like what Meadow eventually becomes and what Melfi is, and Carmela just doesn't know how to deal with that. She goes into panic mode. And so, okay, so now we're at Satriali's, and this is, I'm sorry. This is, again, one of the scenes that makes me love The Sopranos. The Sopranos was only these kind of scenes from beginning to end, 45 minutes or an hour, whatever it is, of these kind of scenes of just them sitting in front of Satriali's and dealing with this kind of shit, bada bing, Satriali's back and forth. I'd be okay. And even the way that this scene is written, humor-wise, and Junior just sits there, doesn't look up the whole time because he knows what this all is. I'm sure he knows this game. He knows this ruse. And because he's not stupid and he's just eating. He doesn't even look up the whole time. And Johnny Sack goes into this whole diatribe. Junior, I want to pay you super respect. Blah, blah, blah. Hesh came to me. I'm sorry I came to him. And then Tony, why didn't you come to me?
I'm not going to come to you after the boss of the family told me one thing. How would that look if I went to you afterwards? It's amazing.
Ren says, I always think what a brutal man Tony is, and yet he does not use that brutality against his family. He kind of does with AJ later on, but not really. Not really at all.
That should have been done so much earlier with AJ. AJ needed that season one.
And yeah, it came way too late for him. And he maybe shows it to Carmela once or twice when we deal with the money situation, but not really. He never really brings full Tony Soprano to Carmela. She never sees, when he gets into an episode where he talks about the two Tony Sopranos. You've only seen one of them. I want to show you the other one. He's talking to Melfi when he says that in the later episode. But ultimately, Carmela sees very little of the other Tony Soprano, the bear, in that metaphor of that particular season. Let's go in the chat one more second. McDicker says, Carmela simply isn't very talented. You're going to love this one, Matt. Carmela simply isn't very talented. Maybe that's where AJ gets it from.
My God.
Oh God, I do not want to get to next week anymore. Or next
Don't you're ruining this. I'm
sorry, I'm ruining such a great episode, and it's such a great scene too. So okay, so Hesh sits there, and Tony makes this big show saying, in all due respect, he doesn't think Johnny should tell Junior how to run his family. Where do you get off, Johnny Sack? It's such bad acting. Where do you get off saying that in my family? And I wouldn't expect to see the Statue of Liberty again, fucking with a man as tough as your Uncle Junior. And Junior's just like, yeah, whatever. And Johnny says, Hesh is an old friend of New York as well as Tony, so someone had to step in so someone doesn't get fucked. I never said fucked, says Hesh. Hesh corrects him. Tony tells him, barely keeping a wink out of his voice. He tells him that Hesh didn't come to him first instead of airing your dirty laundry in public. Hesh plays the part, grumbling, Junior knew how he felt. How would it look if I went to you? So Johnny calls out, bottom line is, what are we going to do about this? Junior shoots a look to Tony and says something. I bet you guys have a suggestion. Just to let you know that Junior knows what's going on, because he looks right at Tony. He goes, I bet you have a suggestion of what should happen.
No, he says it to Johnny, because Johnny's the one that's.
Oh, he does say it to Johnny, but he's kind of almost glazing at Tony a little bit. He side eyes Tony.
I have a feeling you got a suggestion for me.
And this is the funniest line, maybe the funniest. It's in competition with Pussy's line for the funniest line of the episode. And part of why I just love Johnny Sack, because he just has amazing lines, dialogue like this. If there were any flies in you, Junior, they'd be paying fucking rent. Everyone laughs except for Junior, who just goes, wow, I could learn to live like this. Like, he starts to just really have so much fun, as you were mentioning earlier, Matt, really awesomely mentioned earlier, that Junior he's high off this. This is the first hit of weed he's ever smoked, and he's starting to get a little
He's got one of the guys from New York, a bigwig from New York, coming up here paying respect to him, like
pandering to him.
Yeah.
Pandering to him, and he's just like amazing. So we get into this whole thing, yada yada yada, and 500,000 is too much, and Junior's like, whoa, and he goes. They basically agree to 300 grand for the back tax and the 2 points in the shy, and at 1.5 points in the shy. And
no, he talks him down to 250.
That's what I'm saying. Hesh immediately goes 250. And Junior smiles and goes, what'd I tell you? Hold on to your cocks when you negotiate with these desert people. And then everyone laughs in relief as, oh, okay, maybe Junior's going to be okay, as they shake on it.
And is it Sam? Is Sam the one that's watching this for the first time right now?
Yes.
Like that scene in front of Satriali's is just, it's like just such a great place, and so many important things just happen sitting out there on that tiny coffee table in front of the deli. It's amazing.
And this is something I want to mention because I feel like it doesn't get said enough, and I don't know what they do, but every time we get a Satriali scene, the sky looks so fucking cool. I don't know how they shoot it, if they shoot it at a slightly low angle, so we're always looking up a little bit in it. I'd have to really think about it from a technical camera standpoint. But they do some really interesting ways that they frame shots at Satriali's that it's just so iconic and kind of different, looks different than any other way they shoot any other kind of scenes in The Sopranos.
My favorite shot in the entire series, I'm not going to ruin it right now and say what it is, happens in front of Satriali's towards the end of the show. And it's like what you said, the sky plays a part of it.
Does it involve an animal?
Yes, it does. And it's the greatest shot in the whole series.
Okay, I know exactly what it's one of my favorite scenes too.
Oh, it's amazing.
It's really awesome, dude. It really is. Visually, it's great. I love the Satriali stuff. I know my spelling's don't worry about your spelling, and don't worry about my Matt. Your spelling is completely acceptable when you're watching a podcast with someone that mispronounces every possible word he could at any possible time. So I appreciate that. Okay, so this is, we're back in Tony's dream as he's taking a piss, and he looks over the shower to see a woman inside the shower. The shower door slowly opens to reveal a naked body, and we cut to Lorraine Bracco's body double. Well, it's Melfi.
Yeah, I was gonna say that body is entirely too hot.
Yeah,
entirely to be passed off as Lorraine Bracco.
In fairness, Lorraine Bracco, between seasons of The Sopranos, was in a live theater show. I remember seeing this on a this coming season of The Sopranos, and she actually went naked on stage. It wasn't hair, but it was.
That looks like a Bing girl in the shower, though.
It really does. It does. It does, Matt. No doubt.
Again, it's his dream. Of course, in his dream, he's not going to picture her what 45 to 50-year-old Lorraine Bracco really looks like. He's going to envision it you know, however he envisions it in his head.
Great way of saying that. And I also think that's important to think about that. A lot of the Sopranos, and especially when we're in the dreams, we are seeing things from Tony's perspective. In the same way on a show like How I Met Your Mother, from the standpoint of Ted telling you, our narrator is we're almost at times with Tony getting which is almost a trope for TV and movies, the unreliable narrator. And Tony is very much the way he talks about things, the way he looks at things, and the way 75% of the narratives from the Sopranos is from Tony's perspective, and it's an unreliable narrator. You're getting things from Tony's perspective. You're not getting the omnipresent eye in the sky the way you get in something like The Wire. On the Sopranos, it's very much Tony centric, and you're looking at things through Tony's eyes from scene to scene. So, and it becomes more intensified when we deal with Tony's dream sequences. So it ends up being Melfi, Mr. Soprano, and it's really kind of a creepy moment. And Tony bolts up in the middle of the night, and I just think this is so weird because the way Carmela wakes up and just turns to him and goes, "Sex?"
Actually, do you want sex? Like she was like more than willing to just wake up in the middle of the night and give it to him if he could just possibly get it up for her.
What planet are they on, Matt?
Oh no.
What planet does that happen? What's going on? I mean, Carmela.
Honestly, I think part of it though is I think she thinks that would be a way to help him. Like that would be her way back in where he needs her all of a sudden if she could do that.
Good point. And I think that she's struggling to try to find a way to connect to him right now.
And she's an old school Italian where that's part of her job. Yeah, I guess to do
she's
that.
Thinking about it as her job too. Like, that what you want? Are you interested now? Come on.
Yeah.
Or maybe if
she's
we're going
to shut him down 150 times, 1,000 times in the middle of the night. But this is the one time she's like, yes, anytime you want.
Now, not to get too graphically gross here, but I also think it possibly could be that he woke up and because he was having a dream about Melfi, it could imply that she felt something rubbing up against her that got very excited very quick and thought that he was interested in her for that reason. You know, when you're with your partner, you sort of be able to sense when they're turned on. So she woke up and sensed that she got the force for the erection, erection, and she kind of felt that it was there and turned and goes, "Oh, is it sex time? You're okay now. You made it through it." So I think part of it was probably this. And here you go, Matt, because I was wrong. Cut to Irina peeling her top off from her heels, and he goes, "You should dress nicer, dress differently, like maybe in a business.
Cover it up, make it work a little bit for you. You know, you look too easy."
Yeah, you look too easy, basically. You want me to dress like a man? No, you
should put on a suit or something. You want me to dress like a man? You fucking wackadoo.
Mick Dicker says that scene in bed was the opposite of real life.
Right.
So, yeah, wearing nice business. So, yeah, what do you wackadoo? I want you.
You fucking wackadoo. He said, "You want me to look like a man?" No.
And it basically is just him trying to tell her to dress more like Melfi. I'm just saying maybe wear something more professional, you know, like you're in business. Irina takes this to mean that he wants her to dress like a hooker, and she tells him to fuck off. And he tries to explain, but sighs heavily and says, "Forget it." And he sits in the bed and he goes, "Come here." And she waves her hand. "No. Is everyone in my life bananas or what?" He mutters to himself. And then he goes, "Get over here." So she sulks towards him. And when he goes to her, she pulls him and she shuts herself in the bathroom and she yells at him, "Go jerk off." And he sighs. So we go to the next scene, which is, look at this, as he's showing where she burned him in the last scene.
No, you didn't say that. This is when she throws the thing at him, is right here.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right, Matt. And she waves a hand and she ends up throwing a candle at him. And
a lit candle at him. And it burns him. And he says, he probably just calls her a cunt or something like that. Then she tells him to go jerk off.
Mick Dicker says Star Wars Episode 8, The Force Erection. I like that. From a galaxy far, far away. So, anyways, so the next scene, as Matt pointed out, she got burned. So he's showing her Melfi the burning stuff with a candle injury to his arm. And I love Melfi's reaction. That's not good. But he's saying that Carmela did that. Carmela gets pretty violent sometimes, which is hilarious.
He hasn't come clean with her yet about the Gumas, has he?
Gumars, no. No.
None of them at all, right? He's never mentioned it?
I don't think so. I don't think he's mentioned that he's unfaithful to his wife yet at all, which is interesting because where this ends up going right here. So he goes on to say that with the added problem of the impotence, he thought that maybe they need to spice things up, give him a little jump, get a little jump start. And he suggests that maybe she dress a little different, something more titillating. Melfi pipes up and says that maybe not all girls like to dress like that. Maybe it degraded her. And Melfi says, he says, no, not sexy lingerie. I want her to dress, more professional, more like you. Some women are sexier when they dress down, understated. And this goes, and then he jumps up. The scene ultimately.
No, he says a line though too, right before he does this, where he says, I forget exactly.
Oh, it's obviously you have a killer bod under there. Don't get me wrong.
And then he says, sweet sounding like a mandolin. What was he says that to her at some point, that maybe her voice.
Yeah, her voice. You have a good voice, like you have a sweet sounding voice like a mandolin. It's a lot of shit that he just keeps feeding into her, and she wants to hear it because she's thinking about it from a therapeutic standpoint, where she's like, tell me about that.
I thought this was a dream sequence at this point. Once the mandolin thing happens and it gets creepy, I'm like, oh, we're back in a dream sequence again.
Yep. And Tony gets out of his chair.
Now we're definitely in a dream.
Oh,
sequence.
here it is.
Happens.
Not only do you play it down, but you're gentle, not loud, sweet sounding like a mandolin. And she smiles slightly, like she enjoyed the compliment. And Tony gets out of his chair, because that's why I thought it was a dream too, Matt, when I first saw this, because she seems to be into it in the way she turns to it. Like when he says, you have a hot bod. Oh, no disrespect. She kind of goes, go with it. She doesn't stop him right there and say, don't talk about my body. That's inappropriate. She goes, no, tell me about that. And he gets into the whole, well, you're understated. You've got, you got a lot going on there. And he totally, as we all have, misreads the tea leaves here and goes in for the kiss. Goes full on for makeout session, and she
actually touched lips, right? If I I almost looked away. I was so in shock when it happened.
And it's a quick piece of information here. This scene was initially written for the pilot, but this is where we finally get it. This was supposed to happen almost right away.
Thank God it didn't.
And she says, could you come back later this afternoon? And he's still standing there, like ready to have her take off her clothes and ready to go into bang mode right there. Like Tony is primed and ready. He's like, okay, are you going to do that thing that most girls do in The Sopranos to me, where they just immediately take off their clothes and have sex with me immediately right now because I kissed you? And she goes, okay, then till Tuesday. And he goes, yeah, right. As he seems somewhat bummed, and he ends up leaving there. And Melfi lets out a sigh, like, I lucked out in that deal. So then we see her that night at home reading as she hears some glass breaking outside and the dog barking. She goes out to the front window and peers outside, and she sees a police cruiser's lights turn on and pull away. Then she's at the garage telling the guy that's working on her car that she's had starter problems for a while. And the guy ultimately ends up saying, listen, there's nothing wrong with your car. Even I wouldn't rip you off for this. You have a new starter. It almost has the tag on it. So then we get over to the Mikey and one of his boys dragging the drug dealer along the bridge. This is an interesting location that now this is our second time.
This is the drug dealer that sold the drugs to the kid, if anyone didn't watch the episode.
Absolutely.
Ren sold the drugs to the kid that died, the Taylor's grandson.
Renwood, the more reserved clothing I have to wear, the sexier underwear I wore under them. Hey now. Golly. Thank you.
I'd love to say the same about me, but it's
me too.
I don't think I own underwear that anyone would classify as sexy.
Well, I think I have a pair of like Batman. No. I'll stop right there.
Yeah. That's just breathe sex, Phil.
Yeah, doesn't it? My no Batman underwears. Okay. Underoos. Rusty Irish. Thank you, McDicker. The character's name was Rusty Irish.
That's right.
And Rusty Irish. That was the first shower that were you thinking the same thing? That was the first shower that fucking asshole ever got.
Yeah.
That fucking, I forget the line is. Basically, he cries for mercy, and Mikey's great Mikey line where Mikey goes, "I'll make a deal with you. If you what is it? If you fly, or if you can fly, I won't shoot you down."
Right.
And then he tosses him over the edge without delay, and he splashes down into the river. And I love how they look. They're watching it, smiling as we see some. Excuse me. some teenage boys watching the whole situation as Mikey hands them a lot of money and goes to one of them. What'd you see here? And he goes, oh, this guy really depressed, jumped off. It's too bad. And then the other guy yells to him, how much money did you actually give that guy? It's a really funny scene. Really funny scene where a guy gets murdered. Amazing. That's our Mikey. And Ren says, Matt, you should try the sexy underwear.
Oh, you know what? Next week, that's all I'll wear when we do this.
Exactly, but you won't be able to tell because it'll be cut off right at the end.
It'll be so sexy.
It'll be so sexy, what you can imagine. As one of our great listeners, Tim, usually likes to say, is where we're sitting right now, we could easily not be wearing pants for this podcast. Much love to Tim Gash. Okay, so we're back at Satriali's, and Big Pussy lets Larry Boy, Jimmy, and Ray into the back room. Tony gives him the look. This is a really funny line by Tony. And Tony's really amused that all these guys are pissed off. I thought Junior was the only one that could make it look like that. I thought I was the
only one that Junior could make look like that.
It's a great line by Tony. And the look on his face when he does it is totally that, that crazy drunk uncle that really never says anything to you, but just slaps you on the back. Hey, you hear that, guys? He just gets that. Like, Tony was waiting for this line. He had this line for a while. He couldn't wait to use it. And all the guys get pissed off that your Uncle Junior, he is, okay, let me hear it, boys. And Hugo, that's the closest thing to they talk about the Rusty Irish getting killed. And how
we had no idea that he was actually somehow connected to them, but that was
Larry Boy
within the family.
He was Larry Boy's biggest earner, and Junior didn't ask his permission, and it would have been really respectful of him to actually come to me and ask if it was okay to whack this guy. And Tony's like, I don't get what's going on. What are you talking about? And they say, well, Junior did that. Junior shouldn't have done that favor for the old man. And Tony's like, what is all this shit? What's going on? And then they talk about the poker game that we saw at the beginning of the episode. And Tony gives the line, even a broken clock is right twice a day. Junior had a stand there. He wasn't paying anybody for that game. He had a position. He wasn't playing anybody. And he goes, well, hiking a thumb in Jimmy's direction, saying that Sammy invoked Jimmy's name, it should have been end of story. And Jimmy nods in agreement. Tony sits back in his chair asking what they want him to do. Larry shrugs and says, we made our bed. We need to sleep in it. No one wants to kill Junior. But how long are we going to continue to kick upstairs without it hurting? I mean, something needs to trickle down to us. And Tony says, I'll talk to Junior, After all, he's your uncle. And Tony says, okay, whatever. And Tony's solution to this is knocking on Livia's door and getting Livia to help him. So who is it? It's me. Oh, Anthony? Oh, Yvette, open the door. Oh, Anthony. I didn't want that woman that passed in the hall. I didn't want that really nosy lady to come in. He comes in, and basically Tony says, listen, Ma, you're the one that Junior listens to. Why don't you tell him to be nice to his underlings? And she's like, don't tell me this shit. You want to tell your uncle something? Tell your uncle something. And he's got a lot on his mind. It's just a manipulation that Tony's trying to get her to do work on Junior.
Yeah, he says, I'd hate to see him making bad moves.
Bad decision. But what he doesn't understand, Matt, is that she has already got her own claws into Junior and her own agenda. That all he's doing is, in so many shows when the good guy doesn't know that the bad guy is really the bad guy yet, where the good guy, or in Survivor even this happens, when you don't know if someone's backstabbed you already, and you tell the person that's already backstabbed you your solution to solving the problem.
Right.
So they know your plan and they can fuck with you. And he basically is telling Livia that I'm trying to manipulate Junior. He just feeds in. He gives Livia more wild cards in her hand right here. And Livia totally goes, you talk to him. And then he says, I've got the snacks for you. I've got you the biscotti that you like with the nuts. Yes. Then come on down. I just love how she yells at him in this scene.
Yeah, and you can also tell at this point,
bring the cookie.
Like, he says when she goes in there how nice the place looks. Looks just like her old house. She's gonna go downstairs and play bingo, I think it is, with the other people that are there. So she is much more fit in there. Although she's complaining about the roommate, the woman the woman next door.
Oh yeah, I forgot that line.
Water. Would I live with Gunga Din?
A couple of quick questions in the chat right now. Ren says, now that boy was 14 who died. Yeah, 14 years old. And when the woman said Tony was handsome, Livia rolled her eyes. Yeah, that was awesome when
the woman down the hallway, right?
Yeah, she's like, yeah, my son's fucking beauty. My son's a fucking beauty.
I agree.
Yeah, Tony.
Of course you do.
Of course you do, you fucking Soprano. We're co-hosting. Our third man in the booth today is Tony Soprano.
Yeah.
What's that, Tony? What are you trying to say?
I'm a man.
Yeah, you are. You're a man, Tony. Okay. So let's continue on as we're getting down to the final stretch of our episode here. So my favorite line in this whole thing is, yeah, you want coffee? Yeah, all right. Bring the cookies. Just the way she yells, bring the cookies, is just so funny. Then we get a really fun Father Phil and Carmela scene where Carmela says, we've been talking about this a lot. It is basically her coming to grips with Melfi and this situation. We've talked about this. We don't really have to get too far into the scene because we've kind of already talked this up. It's him helping her discover and admit that the only reason why she's upset about Tony in the Melfi situation is that she thinks you're better than me. Is that she's thinking that Melfi's better than her.
Right. The Gumas aren't taking anything away from her. If anything, they're helping her. She doesn't have to fuck that animal.
Exactly. That's what she doesn't have to fuck that animal. And I just viewed them as a form of masturbation. Right. And Tony has something to say to you, Sam, for welcoming him.
Hey, can I be nice?
You are very, very nice.
Sweetie pie.
Oh, you are sweetie pie. Thank you. Tony's very happy for you mentioning him in the chat. So we cut from this scene. She also manages to stick one in, not literally, to Father Phil about, you're a man, you get it, Father Phil. I can't fulfill his thirst. You get it.
And she justifies it. She's like, thank God. It's almost like, it's my fault for the Gumas. I was busy with the kids. I couldn't tend to physically satisfying my man.
Physically satisfy my man. And that's where it gets weird. Where can we be upset that Tony has Gumar when he almost has all but an agreement written up with his wife about it, where she's totally okay, where she basically says, I even encouraged it.
I think that's one thing that she definitely knows she signed up for when she took that job of marrying Tony Soprano.
Right. She knew he was.
She knows that comes with it because she's seen it with all of those guys her whole life.
Then as we get later, it makes her even more of a hypocrite later. Right. But we will get to that. So, or I guess it comes to a point where I've taken enough shit. I can't take shit anymore. But what? But we'll get to that. Then we get Tony and Melfi scene. Tony tells Melfi that Carmela's spending has gone out of control, but you notice that may have been the point, Melfi says. And Tony glances at the clock. Melfi notices that it's time to go. And she goes, before we run out of time, should we talk about what happened in the last session? Tony looks uncomfortable for a moment, but Tony's confidence is palpable. And he just goes, how's your car? And smiles with smarmy smile. He really thinks she's going to be happy about this.
Right. And again, I'm like, oh my God, this has to be a dream. I'm like, this is a dream again. And
he wouldn't admit this openly. And she just goes coldly. Immediately, that other side of Melfi that we see a lot more later kicks on. Did you steal my car and have it fixed? And he's smarmy smiling right back. We had an agreement, no gifts. And he goes, I didn't want to see you get robbed. And Tony smarts, it wasn't you, Melfi said. Tony leers some more, expecting her to fall over with thanks, but she snaps, you had no right to steal my car. I've been scared to death. Why? It's a violation of my privacy. What else have you done? And Tony just gets this look like he did not expect the situation to go like this.
No, and she's never had a patient that's probably capable of getting her car in the middle of the night, going to get it fixed and returning it. Having the means, the financial ability to do that, or anything else, like access to the police to make that happen.
Welcome, our friend Lady Squee. It's really great to have you, and welcome to the chat. Better late than never. as always. And or if whenever you guys are watching this video later on, we really do appreciate it. And if you want to share your thoughts about The Sopranos in the comment section or in the live chat, or on SoundCloud, I was gonna say, or on the chat wing room that I have live, or you can always text and call at 781-990-8509. In fact, we did get a text. I just am seeing it now that says, this was the first episode that I really got pissed at Carmela. Yeah, I think it's fair to say that Carmela does have some really bitch moments in this episode, but I think ultimately it comes to a point. It's almost more understandable than some of it in the future that we get. I can see exactly why she feels bad. This is the first woman like this that Tony's had in his life since they've been married. It must be shocking to her.
And he's going through serious shit, and he obviously has serious problems.
And she can't help.
She can do nothing about it.
Mm-hmm. That is horrible. Anyone that loves somebody, whether it's your best friend, your wife, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, if you see someone in pain, and Carmela's not an evil person. If you see someone in pain and you can't do shit about it, and you know someone else can do shit about it, and that someone else is as Matt's pointed out a few times, you look at as a better version of you, that's going to hurt a lot. It's going to hurt a fucking lot. Okay. So anyways, Tony takes a breath and then he changes his mind. And he keeps fixing with the look and she goes, answer me. And he goes, I love you.
So fucked up.
And he goes, she's cautious with him, but she goes, and he continues, I'm in love with you.
I know I love you. Now it's I'm in love with you.
I'm in love with you. Melfi's like
upping the ante every time.
And Melfi's like, let me talk. But Tony goes, nope, it's not the Prozac. I dream about you. I dream about you all the time. I can't get excited about any other women. There's nothing else to say. I love you. And that's how Tony's simple mind handles it. He's like, I can't get excited by other women. I love you. Must be I love you. Now, Melfi almost looks like she's about to throw up, but she keeps going, saying, but you're only feeling this way because we've made such progress. Tony's like, what? Like, he just doesn't get it. And he goes, I've been so gentle. That's my job. I listened. That's what I do best. I've been a broad, generic, sympathetic woman to you because that's what this work calls for. You've made me all these things you feel like you're missing in your wife and in your mother. Tony, who looks like he might cry, goes, you're making me out to be some kind of fucking mama's boy. And
my mother would have loved it if you and I got together.
I'm sorry, wrong one.
You're making me out to be some fucking mama's boy.
You're making me out to be some kind of mama. He looks at it all wrong. Again, he doesn't understand what she's saying to him. And she says, I want to make sure we understand each other. And he goes, I understand. I'm a man. Oh, I'm a man. You're a woman. I'm
a man.
Yeah, I'm a man. You're a woman. Melfi says, I just want to make sure we understand each other. Again, she says this much better later on in the later episode when she confronts him when we come to the apex of this situation. And I'll slightly spoil it just because it's an important line. I think she could have said it to him here. I'm all those things that she said. I'm nice and this, but that's my job. If I was actually in a relationship with you, I wouldn't deal with your shit. I wouldn't be in a relationship with a guy in the mafia. I can be nice to you because you pay me to be nice to you. And listen, that's what a therapist does. And to maybe offer you some advice, constructive criticism, or call you on bullshit. But for the most part, you're paying a therapist to listen. That's what they do. And Tony doesn't get it. He doesn't get it. A man knows. A man knows. Exactly. A man knows. So,
and I think that the other thing with her is she's the only woman he's ever probably... How many educated women has Tony been in touch with? It's, I
was saying that, Matt, that it's Carmela who is somewhat educated with him, but then his other interactions.
She's just smart. She's not like, she doesn't have a doctorate from somewhere. And
no, I mean, Buco's wife is another smart woman, but she's not, or
yeah, but she's a bitch to Tony. No one hates Tony more than her.
But I'm saying she's probably another example, but she's not. He doesn't have a lot of experience with real successful, strong women at all.
Yeah, particularly because she's strong and not, but yet not over. Like, okay, so Artie's wife is strong, but she's a bitch about it. She's in your face about it. She's miserable. This one's not. She's also sweet and caring at the same time as being strong.
Ren said, "Oh yes, you can join us live in the Friends of the Filthy Issues Guys show on Google Plus in our group that is some awesome stuff gets posted every day by Ren and Sam and Lady and all of our friends that take part in that room. So thank you guys so much for making that community growing and having so much fun in there. So thank you to all of you, especially the people listening right now, that you guys have done such a great job at promoting and pushing that community. I can't say enough awesome things about you guys. So Sam says, or man knows, Sam says, when he flat out professed his love to Melfi, my jaw straight dropped.
It totally did. Mine did too. It was so uncomfortable.
Ridiculously uncomfortable.
And I was praying, I'm like, please be a dream. Please be a dream. Please be a dream.
And Ren also adds, Carmela's jealous that Melfi can change Tony, but she can't.
Yeah.
But I would say that's what Carmela thinks, but I don't think that even Melfi can change Tony. I don't think anyone can change Tony. I think maybe Tony changes a little bit, but I'd say it's more like he uses the advice that Melfi. We're going to talk about this a lot with the end of the Melfi arc. I think what they end up saying that causes her to make the decision she does at the end of the series makes sense to everything Tony does for her or with her. He uses strategies that she gives him to use in his criminal activity to be a better criminal. He doesn't do it to be a better person. He does it to be able to.
He does it to be a better father sometimes and to try to interact with his kids. I think he was a lot more patient with AJ than he ever would have been otherwise.
Fair enough. And I think maybe with Christopher too. I think with some of the stuff,
turns out great at the end. You're right.
It does, but I'm saying in the heart of it, where I'll give you an intervention, maybe the best Soprano scene of all time. I'll give you an intervention right up your ass.
It's so fucking amazing.
Oh, I can't wait till
I forgot that even happened. That's amazing.
I can't wait till we get the intervention episode. But like by even making those decisions or allowing Christopher to have some of those moments that he has with Christopher because he understands sickness. I understand therapy as a concept, because he's been to college, because he's done a couple of other things. Okay, so let's finish up this episode. We get the Little League game where the kids at the ball game gets a hit. Everyone stands up and applauds. And we cut to Tony and Junior in the stands. Tony says something, but Junior interrupts him and says, I always thought you'd make the pros. Not a varsity pro. You had a swing like Joey D. And Tony's like, I could barely hit 250. And Junior says, that's because you were too busy. You didn't want it. You were too busy chasing skirt. Your average was 500. And then we get into the Octavian and Augustus being a good leader is doing this. And
if you've never watched Rome on HBO, you will learn so much about Roman history. That's worth watching. It's only 2 seasons. Everyone out there, you've seen Rome, right, Phil?
I've seen Rome. It's real, and it is the precursor to how we got Game of Thrones on HBO too. Not that it's the similar show at all. I just mean in a weird genre type style. It's the first show like that HBO really.
Yeah, but I learned so much Roman history from it. That's all. That's how I know all these people he's talking about. I'm like, I only know Octavian, Augustus, how that whole thing happened.
Watch Vikings, Matt. Watch Vikings.
I know you've told me that. I will.
I think just from that standpoint, from you saying that, I only know anything about Viking history through watching that show and then researching the real stuff and see how they changed stuff.
Right.
I know this is a different podcast, but I would watch Vikings, Matt. I think that might be. I don't suggest shows to you.
I know you suggested Breaking Bad, and
I've suggested one show to you in my life, and that's Breaking Bad. When it was like you're like, I don't watch TV anymore. I don't like anything since The Sopranos. I'm like, watch Breaking Bad. I'm not going to watch Breaking Bad. You're a teacher. Watch Breaking Bad, and I would say watch Vikings. It's good stuff. It's not on the level quality wise. I mean, it's a really good show, but it's not. It's a History Channel show.
Right.
But it's good, and it's very much equating, or I could see it being a parallel to the Rome on some level. Ren says, great show, Vikings. Sam says, I agree, it's a good show and it was cool having seen Game of Thrones before it, seeing people like Mance and Edmure in there. Absolutely, it was great crossover with some of the sub characters and the co-star characters. Anyways, so this is just a fun scene between
Tony's trying, and again, it's cool because it brings up the fact that Tony's a history buff because he knows all this stuff about Augustus and Octavian. He's trying to explain this whole thing, assuming that Junior would possibly know some of his Roman history, and Junior has no idea what the hell he's talking about.
Junior goes, I get your fucking point, but why didn't you just come out with it? Why this Octavius and this bullshit? And Tony goes, I don't know. I just love Tony. Again, I love Tony and his reaction, and I also love how, I'm going to say love again here, but how you can really tell in this scene how much Tony loves Junior.
Right.
And I'd say both ways. But when he says the line about him being in high school and batting 500 on coups and could have been in the pros, you can really see Tony smile at Junior, like, my uncle really loves me, that he still thinks about that. He thinks about me as a professional athlete. And especially when we connect to something that Tony says later on about things that Junior says to him, you'll never be a varsity athlete. It connects with how important Junior's support for him is, because he was probably always his funny, quirky, wacky Uncle Junior that was always at every game. Anything that his father was at, Junior was there. Anytime his father was around, you get the feeling Junior and Johnny Boy were best, not just brothers, they were best friends.
And you also get we know this, that Tony, after a certain age, grew up in this life. You know, he grew up with this being part of his life. He was never totally shielded from it. You know, exactly. He saw this his whole life. He knew this whole thing, where AJ was never exposed to this until he went off on his own.
And Ren says, remember, he went there because of the panic attacks. I think he's afraid of them coming back. I agree with that as well. Okay, so also in this scene, just to top it off, we also have Junior straight out ask him, you look like Mesamora recently. You look really depressed. Junior gets his point. He goes, I get your point. And he goes, you look Mesamora lately. Why are you so depressed? And Tony's like, nothing. Bullshit stuff. Don't worry about it. And he pats Junior on the shoulder like I'm so happy you actually give a shit about me. So here we go to our last scene of the episode. We kind of already hinted at that. It's Hesh and Tony at Tony at Hesh's. This actually isn't the last episode. No,
it's a couple scenes,
but we're getting there. Basically, Tony agrees to fucks with Hesh a little bit as they're on the horse farm watching the horses. It's a little precursor to Tony's love for horses and Pile My stuff that's going to come later.
And animals yet again. Well, that's the word.
Animals yet again. And
he's like, I love it out here. It's so amazing. And Hesh is like, yeah, the smell though.
Yeah, the smell of shit. I could watch them all day, but they smell like shit. And Tony fucks with him a little bit, but ultimately gives him his 50 grand and says, I won't profit off your tax. So
what had happened was, though, but Tony, Junior decided after Tony had his talk with him, after the guys were all crying poverty and how Junior's screwing them, Tony took Hesh's $250,000 and split it up $50,000 amongst all the.
Right. He said that at the beginning of the scene. I'm sorry. You're right. I skipped over that.
Splits it up between all the captains. So Tony got 50 grand as being one of the 5 captains underneath Junior.
Exactly. And he decided, and Hesh knew it. It was one of those, you know it, I know it, you know, I know, you're not taking that money. And,
right.
And he gave him the 50 grand. So we get to our second to last scene of the episode, which Tony's sitting by the pool. Carmela comes out and sits behind him, and she looks really awesome in the scene to be quite like she
did. I noticed it too.
Edie Falco looked really beautiful in the scene. So he tells her that nothing's wrong with Dr. Melfi. Basically, she comes to grips. Talking to Father Phil helped her, and she came to grips with it's okay for him to see Melfi. Go see Melfi if it's helping you. You're doing the right thing. I'll be here to support you, Tony. She's giving you something I can't give you. I should be happy about that.
And it's the first, I think it's probably the first, like, tender, loving scene you see between these two people, right? I mean,
there's maybe one in like the first episode to set the scene of it, but you're absolutely right.
After the first panic attack, but after all the vile behavior between the two of them for the last 4 or 5 episodes, it's a nice scene.
It is a really nice scene between the two of them, and she is just very calming. I like how it was shot, and you're right. Someone suggested in the notes that I'm borrowing suggested that it was because of the color she was wearing, that it just works really well with her complexion. There was just something going on with the way Carmela, she was glowing.
Yeah, and she says, I want to be part of your life. He says, you are my life. You know, it's a very heartwarming scene. You need to see that scene because I was starting to feel like, man, these people fucking hate each other throughout, you know, leading up to it to this point. And you really see here why so much of the stuff that happens later on in the show is you know, is such a big deal, because they do have this. They deep down inside really do love each other.
Exactly. So we get the dinner table where Junior is having his time with the guys. Tony clinks up and says, even if he wasn't my uncle, I would salute to Junior. He gets it. And we also hear we see all the captains there, everything. And right as they toast glasses, we cut to the waiter who has a bug on his name tag, and we see the FBI shooting this and spying on this whole situation and bugging it. And we see Junior Soprano's picture be taken to the head of the bulletin board as our classic bulletin board criminal stuff, as Junior is officially the head of the family and Tony's plan is working.
They take Jackie down and they move Junior up. They cross out the name, you know, the capo on it, and they write Boston under it.
Really intense moment. And that's the end of our episode. Great episode. A little longer than we usually take recapping it, but as we get further into Soprano episodes, it's
we keep saying it's going to get shorter, and it hasn't yet.
But what I'm saying is, as we get deeper, we're going to get deeper in it, because it's harder to, because I tried to a couple of times graze over stuff, and then you're like, wait, forget that. It's because I don't want to forget it. So I think we'll just be organic to how whatever these things are. So, and try to keep things down. We've been babbling a little extra today, having a little extra fun because it's close to Matt's vacation, so I feel like I can be a little bit more flexible with him. He's got,
and then we might just bang a bunch of them out over vacation. Those will be.
I think when we bang a bunch out, it'll be easier to do them kind of quicker and just do quick sum up. But Sam says I really love this episode, and me too. Really like this episode. This was my favorite episode this season, Matt. I don't know about you if it matched that. But to me, The Sopranos keeps getting better and better every episode.
Right. And it's funny because we said 3 episodes, wow, this really feels like The Sopranos. And and now this one, it's even more so, wow, this really feels like The Sopranos.
Yeah.
See Johnny Sack come in and just bringing that whole element of New York, which we haven't seen yet, and is amazing.
A couple quick fun facts. Rusty Irish gets flung off the bridge. That's Patterson Falls. It becomes the second time in season 1 that David Chase gives us a dramatic location in that. There's also the funniest line in the episode. I've eaten more queens than Lancelot. A couple of other funny lines. Not too many fun facts in this episode. Too many. Johnny Sack. First time we meet Johnny Sack. Rusty Irish dies. Pax Soprano is the title's a reference to Pax Romano and related terms, which refers back to the lack of conflict over a long period of time due to unchallenged rules of a single dominant power Tony hopes to achieve with the Soprano family. Pax Romana was an error invented by the Roman Empire, Emperor Augustus, mentioned by Tony in his conversation with Uncle Junior. So, Matt, I think this is a good enough place to cut off. Let's see if anybody else has any last comments or questions in the chat room. Lady says, I need to actually watch this show. I've heard so much about it. I think you would enjoy it. Just don't overhype it too much. I think over expectations is how anything in life gets ruined. It's a good show. Don't keep all the same visual. It's sometimes when a show's influenced a lot of other shows, you go back and watch it and you can say, oh, I've seen so many other shows do things like this. A lot of things The Sopranos was doing its first. So watch it with a grain of salt of that it came out in 1999 compared to similar to the era we live in now with the Breaking Bads, the Game of Thrones.
And why it's so important is if you go back earlier than that, I don't think you are going to see a lot of this stuff.
You're not.
Really groundbreaking stuff.
Matt, you're right. And we talked a lot about that in the first episode that I was actually recently listening to, where it was really the first show. Some could say St. Elsewhere, some could say Oz, but Sopranos was the one to make it fun or make it more popular, put it to the populace.
Really, when you watch it, it's the same quality as a high-end movie. And I think that's
And our last comment of the day, Sam says it's really good. You can watch it on my timeline because I'm watching it for the first time too. Awesome, guys. Everybody, Ren, Sam, Lady, McDicker, who have always who have been joining us this whole time. Thank you guys so much for checking us out for this Sopranos broadcast. And if you are watching us for the first time and you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button to be alerted whenever we go live. Please join the community on Google Plus, the Google Plus community. You can find the link to that in the description box below. You can also subscribe to our gaming channel to watch Joe Dirty Locks do lots of video game streaming, and I'll show up on there on occasion here and there, just trying to get my video game streaming stuff all set up. Tom says, hello? What the fuck? No. Oh, Tom, I'm so sorry, buddy. Great stream for what I watched this lady. Sorry, buddy. We'll be back much. Rewind. Just rewind. You can follow me on Twitter at I Got Issues Man. You can follow Matt on Google Plus at Big Daddy Matt. And yes, if you have any questions, email me at IGotIssuesMan@gmail.com. Check out issuesprogram.com. You can find the feeds to our podcasts there and find us on iTunes if you Issues Guys podcasts, all that stuff. Matt, it's really good to talk to you as always, buddy.
Yeah, and if we don't talk to anyone else here, if you do Christmas, all that good stuff, if we don't talk to anyone before, then have a Merry Christmas.
Have a Merry, Happy Christmas.
And Happy Hanukkah, Phil. A little late for you. I'm sure you're lighting candles every night. So
yeah, tons of candles, tons of dreidels, tons of potato-like substances. Okay, guys, I'm going to go eat some pasta because I'm fucking hungry. Thank you, Sam. Sorry so much. Fuck you guys. Fucking time zone, says Tom. You fucking A. I know we do suck. Fucking East Coast assholes. Have a good night, everybody. Talk to you soon. Later.